Hi everybody, Professor Snart checking in as we continue with our English 1102 course. We are just finished up with Unit 3, which was our first slightly more formal writing assignment, although still fairly narrow in scope, just writing a single paragraph and then responding to a couple of their posts. But as I said before, we've also covered this one of the most sort of core concepts in terms of the composition part of our English composition class, the writing aspect of it. This idea of the shape of an essay or the shape of a paragraph, which, as the material in that unit discusses, is really, it's another way of talking about how you manage the relatively general versus the relatively specific in the within an overall essay, but also within each body paragraph. And so the way that those two things work, they sort of mirror each other. One is on the macro level, the whole essay, and then kind of the micro level, each individual body paragraph. Intro and conclusion paragraphs work a little bit differently, so those were kind of outside the scope of what we looked at. But now we do a quick turnaround to unit number 4, which moves us into our next reading, or our next discussion of the reading. So we'll take a look at unit 4 here. One of the things I want to remind people of is that because many of our units do depend on a post, but also responses, I really want to make sure that people are making an effort to do the work on time, not just at the last minute, because a lot of classmates could be waiting for posts to respond to, and if everybody is waiting, or too many people are waiting to post an original paragraph or discussion board post, you really, not only does that not work too well for your work, but it also kind of hampers your classmates. So I'd really prefer not to have to redo all the due dates so that we have an original post date and a reply date. It gets just too kind of choppy in the 8-week format, a little too hectic almost. But if things continue as they did for Unit 3, I'll have to do that. So let's try to avoid that if possible. Okay, so looking at Unit 4. So we sort of extend our discussion of some of the, I guess, composition aspects of our course. There's a sample essay here that's attached. It's about Faulkner's A Rose for Emily. And so we're not reading it as an example of like a perfect essay, although there are lots of really good things in it. And there's a quick quiz that you're doing based on that sample essay. So of course, the sample essay is of the type that we'll be writing once we get to writing the full-blown essays in our class. So the quiz will point you to particular things that you'll want to kind of emulate in your own writing, but also sort of test to make sure that you understand what a primary source versus a secondary source is, or to look for certain key components of an essay. So we're not writing our own yet, but again, we're sort of putting the pieces in place so that when we do write our own full essay, we have all of those things ready to go and we can apply them. We then talk about Fisa statements, obviously a really important part of the kind of essay that we're writing. I won't read this verbatim, but it's important that you go through this. And again, when I grade your essay, there's not some mysterious set of things I'm looking for. I'm looking for, is there evidence that you as the student read this little section on Fisa statements and can now apply that in your writing situation. So I know writing can sometimes seem sort of mysterious, or there's just like a secret set of things that I'm particularly idiosyncratically looking for, but that's really, really not the case. I'm trying to make it as transparent as possible so that the expectations are really clear on your end, and you have all the tools to meet those expectations. There's a little bit on the writing process. There's no one single process. This is just sort of like a visual, that will guarantee success every time. But you do have a process, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's the big thing that I'm trying to get to here, is that oftentimes, students, they write, they struggle, they work hard, they don't get a great grade, or at least not one that reflects all that work they put into it. And then without thinking, without being aware of their process, they do exactly the same process again, get the same results, and are equally frustrated. And it often never occurs to them, I think, to think about the writing process. Like, are you doing enough on the front end in terms of brainstorming, outlining, planning to really create a good kind of effective essay once you get to the actual writing stage? Or are you just jumping in to write? And that's why it seems really garbled and hard and kind of nerve-wracking. And you invest a lot of time and energy, or at least energy, but you don't always get the grade you think that reflects all of that energy Partly maybe that's a process error, right? You're jumping into the writing phase before really doing anything else. That takes us back to the basics of time management. If you're doing things at the last minute, maybe you can kind of squeak by on a discussion board, but when it comes to the big point essays, you're really going to be in trouble. The elements of the essay, another PDF reading and quick quiz here. So this unit is actually a lot of sort of smaller things that we're doing. And then we do have a discussion board here focused on the short story flight pattern. So you're just doing one post where you can answer all these questions. One of them asks for a picture that you can find that you think sort of illustrates one of the characters in the story. Make sure that shows up, properly in your post, not just as an attached file. That'll be a problem. And make sure you answer these fully. So these don't require just a one-sentence answer. They should be well-developed paragraphs. We're looking for quotation from the primary text, the short story, to support what you're saying. So again, a fairly involved unit. There's readings, there's a couple of quizzes to do, the discussion board post that really will require some time. So we have, a quick turnaround then to our Friday due date. So if you're waiting until Friday afternoon, even if you get things done, it's really not going to be your best work. So again, as we get more into the meat of the course, it's really important to be aware of time management, being conscientious of doing things early enough so that there's enough done that people have, posts to respond to. This is sort of like how you've got to manage the rest of the course. And if you think about it, we're in week 2 of 8 weeks, halfway through. So we're almost done 2 weeks of an 8-week course. It goes by really quickly. Okay, so that's about it. If you have questions or concerns, be in touch with me, and I will talk with everyone soon.